Memorial Day coming up, and look where we are. This is the area outside of Nashville, and guess what's happening here in a few years? The Super Bowl. Super Bowl 64 officially coming to the new Nissan Stadium in Nashville. So the 49ers will be wrapping up their four-peat in Nashville. They're going to win their first Super Bowl coming up this next year in Inglewood, LA, SoFi Stadium, in the Rams house, if you will. Then they're going to go down to Atlanta and win another one. And that's my favorite stadium in the NFL, by the way, the Falcons Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Then they're going to win again in Las Vegas for the three-peat. And then maybe Nissan Stadium, the new one here in Nashville, is going to be my favorite after all that. But 4 in a row coming up for the 49ers. All kidding aside, it is really scenic around here. This is one of those roads, if you look forward, where they don't have like a middle line. It reminds me a little bit of Europe. I remember driving around Europe when I was younger, and even now there's so many skinnier roads where you don't have the dividing line. Makes for a slightly sketchier drive, but it's also much more rustic and rural drive. The Jedd Fisch interview is up. We got to talk about the 49ers pipelines of talent. There are 2 major ones open right now. One to the University of Indiana and Curt Cignetti. 49ers have 4 players. They added 2 more over the course of the past few weeks, and Kalon Black and Mikhail Kamara on top of CJ West and Curtis Rourke last week. Some horses. 49ers also adding some horses from the University of Washington, though, and that's where Jedd Fisch is the coach, and he was with the University of Arizona prior to Washington. So look at all the products that the 49ers have gotten from the Jedd Fisch system. First, Jacob Cowing, who played for Arizona under Fisch. Then Sebastian Valdez, who was at Washington under Jedd Fisch. And now 2 consecutive draft picks in offensive lineman Carver Willis, and then the cornerback Ephesians Prysock. And there could have been more, because the 49ers really, really like Tetairoa McMillan, the wide receiver, the 6'5 wideout who ended up going to the Carolina Panthers. There's even rumors that the 49ers wanted to trade up for Tetairoa McMillan last year. The bottom line is that they respect the hell out of Jedd Fisch. There's a nice car rolling down here. It might be Robert Saleh, who obviously now lives in this area. He is the Tennessee Titans head coach. But Jedd Fisch has this multi-pronged connection with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. And this kind of stuff matters to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. It goes all the way back to 2008 when Jedd Fisch was an assistant under Mike Shanahan in Denver. John Lynch was a player there over the course of that offseason. And the bond became so strong that about 20 years later, Jedd, the coach at Washington, ran into John Lynch at the NFL Combine. And John said, well, hey, my son Jake is out of college. We don't want him to work for the 49ers quite yet. He needs some more seasoning before he joins the 49ers staff. Jedd Fisch said, Jake should just come and work for me at Washington. And they hired him as a graduate assistant. So Jedd Fisch and Washington, they are a feeder for 49ers players and also for 49ers coaches. So in this conversation that I had with Jedd, we get into all of this. And it is really cool because guys like Ephesians Prysock and Carver Willis have played in a system and practiced in a way that is very similar to how the 49ers operate. And that should make them much, much more prepared to make a quick transition or a quicker transition to the NFL level. Ephesians Prysock actually was teammates with Jacob Cowing at Arizona, and then he followed Jedd Fisch to the University of Washington. So he's been playing in a defensive system, the same one, for 4 years, and we'll see how much Raheem Morris changes some things around for the 49ers. So I think it's safe to say that a cornerback who is 6'3", who's put on 25 pounds of muscle over the course of the past 4 years, Fisch told me he's become a much better tackler. I think it's safe to say he's going to be used in some press coverage concepts. He's going to be used in zone. He's just hard to throw over or throw around with his length and his long arms. And I think that's what the 49ers are going to be zeroed in on. They're looking to take away passing lanes with length on that back end. Richard Sherman did it. He came from the Pacific Northwest after playing for the Seahawks, and now Ephesians Prysock is going to try to do it for the 49ers. And I do wonder where exactly the 49ers do slot Ephesians in to begin, because they're set right now at the outside cornerback positions. They've got Diameter Lenore. And by the way, the another cool connection is that Ephesians Prysock is from Salesian High School in LA. That's where Diameter Lenore went to high school as well. So Ephesians' two older brothers were teammates with Demo in high school. So all this stuff comes full circle. But he's 6'3". Uh, that lends itself to outside cornerback height. But the thing is that there are big slot receivers now as well. I mean, the 49ers have got one of them in Dejon Stribling. They had another one of them in Jawan Jennings. These are guys who are 6'2", 6'3" as wideouts, and oftentimes they're too tall for smaller nickelbacks to cover. Your standard old school 5'9" Upton Stout nickelback can get eaten alive if you start playing the jump ball game with an inside receiver. I think the NFL has evolved that way offensively. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more bigger slot cornerbacks. The big slot position has gained popularity because of the dynamic that I'm talking about. And I think a lot of times you see safeties come and play that big slot, man up against somebody, that third wide receiver who's got too much size for a smaller nickel. But who's to say that a cornerback, a bigger corner, especially a guy who hasn't cracked the top two on the depth chart, cannot play on the inside as well? So especially given all the tight ends coming into this game, we're seeing this proliferation in 13 personnel. The Rams are doing it in the 49ers own division. Ephesians Prysock at 6'3", if he can prove that he's ready to play sooner than some people expect, sooner rather than later, why not match him up against some tight ends in heavy tight end sets against some big slot receivers on the inside, while somebody like Diameter Lenore and somebody like Renardo Green play on the outside. The 49ers also have Nate Hobbs on this team, who I think could play a little bit of that big slot role for San Francisco. I think Hobbs is better as an inside cornerback than he is as an outside cornerback based on what we've seen on his game tape over his NFL career with both the Raiders and then the Green Bay Packers. And then the 49ers signed Jack Jones, a veteran cornerback who's a much better zone corner than a man corner. I would say the same thing probably for Ephesians Prysock. Somebody as tall as he is, and I went over this in the article with Jedd Fisch, and this is something that he talked about that was immediately a strength of Ephesians Prysock at Arizona. He started as a true freshman. When you've got that kind of length, that kind of height, that kind of length, you're immediately going to be able to get into passing lanes. It's going to be hard to throw over you or around you in zone defense. I'm going to get that article up on the screen one more time because we have the spider chart that we can go through right now for Ephesians Prysock, which is very, very impressive. So here's the piece up on the standard. That's actually not the piece, that's me. But the piece up on the standard is right here. I actually share the same birthday as Jedd Fisch. Just realized that when I talked to him the other day. We were both born on May 5th. He just turned 50. I didn't just turn 50. I turned 38. But we scroll down in the piece, and this right here is your look at the athletic profile of the 49ers cornerback out of the University of Washington. So you can see the height, 98th percentile. The wingspan, 95th percentile. Arm length, 94th percentile. He's got 33 plus inch arms. It's really long. And that's why you heard Jedd Fisch say that he's hard to throw over he's hard to throw around because of that arm length and that height. And typically when you see a player as large as Ephesians Prysock, as linear as him, you don't see him run all too fast, but he ran a 4.45 40. Started 42 games over his college career. Every single one of them was in a winning culture. When he showed up, Arizona was coming off of a 1-11 season. And when he left Arizona, followed Jedd Fisch to Washington, they were the number 11 team in the country. Washington was a really good team when Prysock was there. Carver Willis came over from Kansas State to play for Washington, and the 49ers then made 2 straight draft picks of Washington players. So in order to read this, go ahead. I'm going to put this into the description, and I'm going to ask Mike to do that right now. And I'm also going to put it into the chat section. This is one of the cooler 49ers connections to college football that there is. And I think it's going to give you a lot of really insightful nuggets on how the 49ers operate when it comes to recruiting players, or, I shouldn't say recruiting because it's more of a college term, but when it comes to scouting players and then finding a way and to determine who they're going to want for their football team. Because, for example, Denzel Boston, a player who a lot of people mocked to the 49ers in their fake drafts, they thought that the 49ers would go after Denzel Boston just because they saw a contested catch jump ball guy at the University of Washington who might be able to learn under Mike Evans. But obviously now, if you read this and you understand how much the 49ers respect Jedd Fisch's opinion, and you understand the coaching connections between San Francisco and the University of Washington, you'll probably come to the conclusion that the 49ers didn't really like Denzel Boston all that much, because if they did, then they would have picked him when they had a chance to pick him. He was on the board because they had the intel that they needed on him in order to make a conclusion for their purposes in the draft. Of course, they went with Dejon Stribling instead. They even traded down a couple times to number 33 before they made the pick, and they went with a receiver who wasn't even in the Jedd Fisch tree. As I mentioned, they really liked Teteroa McMillan, the 6'5 receiver from Arizona, who played under Jedd Fisch, who went to the Carolina Panthers in the top 10 of the 2025 draft. There are even rumors, and these are not confirmed, but as I said, there are even rumors that the 49ers tried to trade up in 2025 to grab Teteroa McMillan. Obviously didn't happen. They drafted Michael Williams. But there could have been, and I'm not surprised if there were, doubts already in 2025 about Brandon Ayuk's ability to come back to be the 49ers' wide receiver. Of course, those doubts got bigger and bigger over the course of the 2025 season, especially the part of it where Brandon Ayuk did enough to void his guarantees, his $25 million plus in guarantees for 2026. And then everything really hit the fan once Brandon Ayuk defected from the team, went MIA on the 49ers. And then, new X receiver necessary. They signed Mike Evans over the course of the 2026 offseason, and then they drafted Dejon Stribling, not only to potentially play the X in the future. That's what we said immediately after the draft pick, because he's tall, he's 6'2", 6'3", he's fast, he runs the 4.3, 640, but also to play that big slot position, the one that Ephesians Prysock might even be tasked with covering relatively early in his NFL career, but the 49ers needed somebody to replace Jawan Jennings in that role. All right, Super Bowl coming to Nashville, Super Bowl 64. Brock Purdy's home area. George Kittle calls this a home area. So does Robert Saleh, although he's no longer with the 49ers. Maybe it's going to be the Niners and the Titans in Super Bowl 64. Titans can get a home game, but Brock Purdy can also say that he's getting a home game since he now does live out here in the offseason. Osa Odighizuwa spoke to Richard Sherman on Richard's podcast, and he said that he has the Cowboys game circled on his 49ers schedule. Remember, Osa, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys, defensive tackle, traded to the 49ers right after free agency opened this year. And he said, speaking to the rivalry, this is a game that for a long time, it's the game that you got a picture on a dartboard and you're throwing the knife at the picture. And now I just take down the picture and I put up the other picture and I'm on the other side of it, but the energy is exactly the same. So Osa Odighizuwa now on the other side of the 49ers Cowboys rivalry. You know, the 49ers and the Cowboys have made a lot of trades over the years. Famously, the Charles Haley trade back in the early 1990s. I think that broke in Dallas's favor. I mean, it tipped the scales of the rivalry in Dallas's favor. But Trey Lance shipped from the 49ers to the Cowboys. I would say that worked in the 49ers' favor. Remember, the 49ers got a 4th-round pick in return for Trey Lance, somebody who didn't start a meaningful game for the Dallas Cowboys. And the 49ers used that 4th-round pick on Malik Mustafa, who had a fire rookie season. Then he tore his ACL. Second season wasn't quite as good, but I think he still projects to start as a safety. If you can ship off a quarterback who's not going to play for you in return for a starter, well, that trade ends up working out in your favor. So 49ers made that trade. It worked out in their favor. Recently, the 49ers traded D. Winters to the Cowboys. On paper, also looks solid for the 49ers, as D was on the final year of his contract, and the 49ers are he wouldn't get started weak side linebacker anymore. They're moving back to Dre Greenlaw and then hoping that somebody like Nick Martin takes that position over the long term. So getting a 5th round pick in return for D. Winters from Dallas represents good value for the 49ers. And then, of course, you've got the Osa Odigizua situation where the 49ers sent a 3 to Dallas. Now, that's interesting because the Cowboys, of course, happy that they got a 3rd round pick. But in the bigger picture, Osa's a really good player, which is why he commanded a 3rd round pick. The fact that Dallas had to put him on the trading block, I thought was an example of poor planning from the Cowboys because they just paid him a year ago. 49ers didn't pay D. Winters. The 49ers had D. Winters on his rookie contract as a 6th round pick out of TCU. But Osa Odigizua was a player whom Dallas awarded a 4-year, $80 million extension to just last year. And then they traded Micah Parsons away and got a defensive tackle, Kenny Clark, from the Packers in return. And then they made another trade that brought Quinnen Williams in ahead of the deadline. So less than a year, just a few months after paying Osa Odigizua, they had 2 starting star-powered defensive tackles ahead of him. They had salary cap issues that they had to get under the cap at the time of the start of the new league year, and they had to trade Osa Odigizua. I think that they were backed into a corner because of their own poor planning. So the 49ers were able to get a guy who they hope is going to transform the inside of their defensive line, maybe even their whole defensive line. They hope that they're going to get a guy who can truly help them for the cost of that 3rd round pick. Mike also notes that Dallas moved defensive schemes. They moved to a 3-4. Matt Eberflus now with the 49ers. I think it makes a lot of sense that Eberflus, previously the Cowboys, had Osa Odigizua there. Would be happy to welcome him with San Francisco. Of course, Eberflus, no, not the DC for the 49ers. That job belongs to Raheem Morris, but Morris and Eberflus are tied together by the Monty Kiffin tree, and Eberflus, I think, was verification that the 49ers would still be focusing on a 4-down front, even if Raheem Morris was going to add some tweaks to it, and that they'd be focusing on the linebacker position because Matt Eberflus is known as a linebackers guru in this league. And of course, the 49ers did sign Dre Greenlaw for the $7 million this year. I think that they're going to put some chips into the table with Nick Martin. It's a player a lot of people are sleeping on, but Nick was impressive for the 49ers behind the scenes last year. He moved his way up from looking unplayable in the preseason to starting at Sam linebacker before he suffered that season-ending concussion that lingered for a while. They're continuing to pour into the linebacker position with somebody like Jaden Duggar. We'll see if he's able to play in his first year or if that's more of a redshirt situation, but the versatility there is something that cannot be ignored when we talk about the multiplicity that Raheem Morris is trying to build into this defense. But it's all going to start up front for the 49ers. They've got to put more pressure on the quarterback. And Osa Odigizua, you can check out Richard Sherman's podcast. He spoke there. Osa Odigizua is absolutely a piece that needs to be paid attention to, just given the pressure percentages that he put up with the Cowboys. Top 7 numbers for Dallas. And now he's somebody who can work in the 4-3 for the 49ers. Back to the Jedd Fisch article. I promised I was going to put this one into the comments section, and I started talking about Osa Odigizua, so I forgot to do it. I'm going to go ahead and send this to Mike. Mike can put this into the description. I myself will take this and put it into the live chat. Everybody should go sign up for the San Francisco Standard. Here you go. You can't click on it on the screen, but you can go into the live chat section, check it out. And if you were watching this a little bit later than we are recording this, then you can go ahead and check it out, pinned at the top of the comment section. But this is deep dive 49ers intel like you're not going to get anywhere else. Starting with Carver Willis, then talking about Ephesians Prysock, and it's a one-on-one interview with one of the more successful D1 college head coaches, and he models his program around Shanahan, Lynch, and the 49ers up in Washington. We may have to go sailgating at some point for a Washington game. I find it ironic. We can get into this in a later video. I find it ironic that there is a program that worships the 49ers. The 49ers can do no wrong. And that program is based in the city of Seattle. I think just funny how that all ends up working out. But that's what relationships in this world of football will do for you. All right, guys, I am going to look into this comment section so we can answer some of your questions. Somebody asks, did the 49ers really sign Debo and Bosa? No, they didn't. You're probably getting fake news from somewhere because that did not happen. Now, I've been saying that they're interested in Joey Bosa over the course of this offseason, which they are. Nothing there has changed on that front. The 49ers want Joey at a certain price, and if they can get him at a certain price, probably south of $10 million for the 2026 season, they'll happily sign him and he'll improve their defensive line. But it's not worth the 49ers extending to a spot where it impacts their salary cap situation moving forward. Mike says to post your questions. I agree because I am ready to answer them. Looks like we might have one super chat. Let's go check it out. No, we have a new member. Go ahead and check out memberships if you're on desktop, because we got a new member, and I don't know what tier of membership he got, but there's 3 tiers that you can get, and it's one of the best ways that you can support this channel. Also going to have some exclusive film breakdowns for members coming up here very, very shortly. Maybe take a look at some of the rookies. Do I think that Nate Hobbs is going to battle for the cornerback 2 spot? I think that they've got an inside cornerback look at Nate Hobbs. I think that's the 49ers idea with Nate. I think that Renardo Green is the number 2. I think there's a lot of belief in him. I don't think that he was at his best last year, but I don't think he was terrible either. Remember that the corners last year were operating without a pass rush for most of the season for the 49ers. And if you look at Nate Hobbs' splits, he's been much better as an inside slot guy than he's been at an outside cornerback. And I think that's the mistake that the Packers made with him, is that they paid him to be an outside cornerback. What was it? $48 million over 4 years, and he only played one of the years of that contract. So I mean, that's a lot of money. At $12 million a year for Nate Hobbs to play outside cornerback. He was hurt for a lot of the season. Just wasn't very good on the outside either. And I don't know how much the injuries were affecting him on the game tape, but his tape is fire if you watch him play slot cornerback for the Raiders. And I think the 49ers are smart. I think that Jerry Gray, their new DB coach who worked with Raheem Morris in Atlanta, is familiar with the Nate Hobbs film from the Raiders. And I think that they see an opportunity and maybe even a necessity to truly bulk up the inside cornerback position, because you're seeing so much 13 personnel. You're seeing so many tight splits around the league. The run game is coming back, right? The 49ers are one of the tight split kings of the NFL. What that means is that your receivers are going to be condensed. Even your outside guys are going to be condensed closer to the line of scrimmage, like to the bunch of the line of scrimmage. So closer to all the tight ends and the offensive linemen, to the quarterback. You're not going to be stretched further out wide. What that does is it allows for more running flexibility. Receivers in tight splits have to be able to block more effectively. With the run game coming back into vogue in the NFL, I think tight splits, 13 personnel, bunch of tight ends, whatever, fullbacks, whatever you want to name it, big slot receivers, those guys are going to become more and more prolific in this league. And then defending them is going to be the next trick. To defend those guys, A, you've got to have somebody with cover skills in case they go out for a pass pattern. But B, you have to have somebody who can play the run, play through blocks, be physical near the line of scrimmage. The 49ers have a stud, a young stud in Upton Stout, who can do a lot of what I just listed. The one weakness for Upton Stout, since he's 5'9", is that if you line up somebody bigger against Upton Stout and he has to cover them downfield, you can take advantage of the height mismatch. So I think with Nate Hobbs, I mean, not a 6'2" corner, but he's taller than Upton Stout. He's very good near the line of scrimmage, just like Upton Stout. I think that's somebody that could work with these tight splits on defense and give the 49ers a Swiss Army knife coverage piece in retaliation. I think it's really simple. I think that's what San Francisco's looking at. If you guys think that makes sense, you can give me a thumbs up in the comment section. But if you think that he should be playing exclusively on the outside, then I really wouldn't get that take, because I don't think that he was great exclusively on the outside with the Green Bay Packers. What do I think the future at safety looks like? Well, I'll tell you this much. I think that the 49ers really hope that Marquise Siegel figures out the whole coverage thing this year. Because if he does, he's a good tackler. He's a good athlete. He runs a 4.3 40. He had the best broad jump of any safety at the combine. He had a missed tackle rate of under 10% as a rookie. It's the only 49ers safety that can say that, right? But he couldn't cover last year. He wasn't good at the point of catch. It's like it just didn't click yet for him there. He was in the right position a lot of times, but I still remember a catch that Tutu Atwell made. It was like a 40-plus yard gain against the Rams late at that Thursday night game in SoFi. Siegel was right there with Tutu Atwell. It's not easy to keep up with Tutu. It's small guy, right? He's really shifty. Siegel was there stride for stride, but he just couldn't make the play. Remind me a little bit of, I think it was Akello Witherspoon at the start of his career would be in the right position a lot of the time, but he wasn't able to make the play. And the step for Akello Witherspoon that he needed to take, and he never really did with the 49ers. He had some better times, but he's still in the league, so I think he's figured it out to some degree. But he needed to play the football better at the point of catch. And that's what Marquise Siegel has to do at the safety position. If he can, the other aspects of his game were actually off to a really promising start as a rookie. The tackling was good again, and the speed is good. The athleticism is good. He's the type of player, the type of moldable clay that you want as defensive coordinator, but he's got to execute at that catch point. Jair Brown's under his final season, and at least as far as his contract goes, the 49ers drafted Jair Brown back in 2023 when Steve Wilks was the defensive coordinator. And apparently Steve Wilks got up on the table and pounded the table for Jair Brown. They've gone through many defensive coordinators since then. Wilks gone after 2023, Sorensen gone after 2024, Sala gone after 2025. So this is going to be 4 defensive coordinators in 4 years for Jair Brown. There is always a non-zero chance, and this is something that has to be emphasized because you can never say never in this league. There is a non-zero chance that Jair Brown and Raheem Morris really get along, and it's a match made in heaven, and the 49ers re-sign Jair Brown because he plays good safety in Raheem Morris's defense. I don't think there's a high probability of that, but we've got to see him operate with a pass rush and with a new defensive coordinator first here in 2026. Just the reality of the situation, because the coaching has changed so much for the 49ers over the course of the past 4 seasons on the defensive side of the ball. But if that doesn't happen, there probably is a higher chance that Malik Mustafa, in his second year coming off of the ACL tear, looks the part of a starter for the 49ers. And if the 49ers had it their way, Malik and Marquise Siegel, 2 really athletic guys, 2 cannonballs, play a solid safety position for the next at least couple of years for the 49ers under their rookie contracts. Now, maybe it's not possible. Maybe we're going to see so much hybridization between what the 49ers are doing at corner and what they're doing at safety, something we've already seen a little bit of, or at least hinted at. Maybe somebody like Ephesians Prysock is playing some kind of rover position that takes both safety and cornerback in a new look 49ers defense moving forward. What I do know is that it's going to be really exciting reading some of the hints that the 49ers give us here as we start to see them take the field over the course of OTAs and then training camp. Yep, 4 straight Super Bowls starting this year at SoFi. I hope you guys get the title. I hope you got the joke. And maybe we're going to turn around and look back at all this 4 years from now and say it's not a joke. Maybe Brock Purdy will have led the 49ers not only to the first ever 3-peat, but to the first ever 4-peat in NFL history. SoFi, Mercedes-Benz, which is Atlanta, Allegiant, which is Las Vegas, Nissan Stadium, which is Nashville, where we opened up this show. Oh, Mark says, David, you were right. And I hope that Margot hears this over in the other room. Saratoga water is good. Saratoga water needs to start paying us if you guys are buying Saratoga water. Look, I've got more here. I'm still drinking it. Now, Saratoga water is really good. We got one of those systems installed, though, because Saratoga water is a little pricey, right? So we were buying a lot of bottles because we got kind of hooked on the water. So we got one of those like filter systems installed because ultimately it's going to be cheaper if you're, if you're buying really expensive water time and time again, you might as well just go to the filter and it's going to pay for itself after a few months. Of course, you wouldn't mind a 4P. You got to understand, dude, you should probably learn how to develop a little bit of a sense of humor, not take yourself so seriously. That's where the title comes from. So I know that you wouldn't mind a 4P, but that's the school of thought. We're having fun here. It's the middle of the off season. 49ers don't have any open practices at OTAs this week. That's not going to happen next week. And well, we know where the Super Bowl in that 2030 season is now. And that Super Bowl is in Nashville. At the stadium, which is coming along, I think they've got one more season in their old stadium. And then they move into the new one. And hopefully Robert Saleh is still around as the Titans coach at that point. And they've got some talent now. I mean, they've been bad enough for a long time, and they were active in free agency. They obviously had some picks to work with in the NFL draft. It all does seem to come down to the quarterback position, regardless of where you are on this league. So it's going to be up to Cam Ward and company to take the Titans to new heights because they haven't been at a very prestigious location as far as the standings go in recent years. But Robert Saleh is going to be trying to change that as their head coach. Can Isaac Guerendo block well enough to be switched to fullback? I get asked this every once in a while, and I think that it's very important that people don't undersell the difficulty of Kyle Juszczyk's job. Kyle Juszczyk lays some of the most difficult blocks in the sport. Right? Kyle Juszczyk is... I always go back to 2019, which is the first year that I truly, truly appreciated what Kyle Juszczyk was doing. But they asked him to pick up edge rushers on the opposite side of the formation. And if you don't know how hard that is, consider the fact that you've got to put in receiver quickness combined with offensive tackle strength to be able to successfully execute a block like that. And that's what makes Kyle Juszczyk as valuable as he is, because he brings you a little bit of every single position. The guy was a receiver at Harvard. He was a slot receiver at Harvard in college. The guy takes on defensive ends. I still remember that was Carlos Dunlap in 2019. It created a touchdown for the 49ers. The guy can catch passes downfield still at this level. And the guy, I mean, he's run the ball a little bit. He's taken some snaps. He's run some quarterback sneaks for the 49ers because back as a JV high school player, he was the quarterback back at I think it was Cloverleaf High School in Medina, Ohio, outside of Cleveland. So the guy is super valuable. He's a football player through and through. And just because Isaac Guerendo's got a good relative athletic score doesn't mean that he could do what Kyle Juszczyk does, right? So I think we got to be really, really careful saying, okay, just because Isaac Guerendo's big, strong, and fast, he could technically excel at one of the most difficult positions in the sport, which is the position that Kyle Juszczyk delivers and is so important to the 49ers. Now, I won't discount Isaac Guerendo's ability to potentially do that, but I really want to make sure that people respect what Kyle Juszczyk is bringing to the table, because anybody who says that Juszczyk is not important to the 49ers or that he's a waste of money or what, or a roster spot, that is a clear sign that they do not know football, that they do not know what they're talking about. Because what we've seen Juszczyk do on the field has been such a binding glue for the 49ers offense for a decade now. And if you cannot appreciate what he's done for a decade, you are absolutely blind and clueless as to what's going on the football field, what's happening in the 49ers building. So it's not going to be as easy as, okay, let's just step in and have somebody replace Kyle Juszczyk. You just don't do that. And that's why the 49ers have been insistent on keeping him around for so many years. Eric Gomes says, this is why Kalon Black is not an overreach. If you look at his blocking and picking up blitzes, among other things. Yeah, and it's not easy for anybody at a skill position weight to do an O-line task. Okay? So pass protection as a back entails digging your feet in, anchoring down, and absorbing the hard charging contact of a linebacker who can be up to 240 pounds. I know they're getting lighter in this day and age, but it also means they're moving faster now. So the force that you're dealing with, it's a negligible change, right? You got to have the agility now to deal with guys who can wiggle around you on these blitzes. To deal, though, with a bull rush or a blitz from a static position takes a heck of a lot of leg strength, core strength, and more than any of that, guts. It's not easy to step in front of somebody who's charging hard at you when you're not moving at the NFL level. That's what backs have to do. So that's what any running back has to do in pass protection in Shanahan's system. That's what a fullback like Kyle Juszczyk would have to do in pass protection in the 49ers system. So when you talk about somebody like Kalon Black being maybe the best protecting back in this 2026 draft class, that's a huge deal because it's much, much easier said than actually done. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of moxie to do it successfully. On top of that, there's the whole receiving ability thing. And if there's one thing with Kyle Juszczyk that I wish the 49ers did more of, because he's so dependable, I wish they threw to him a little bit more. I get that they've got other weapons, and especially now they probably have other weapons to go to. But it seems that the last couple seasons, when they were short on receivers, they could have utilized Kyle Juszczyk a little bit more in that pass game. All right, well, we're going to take one more question, and then I am out of here. One more good one. This is a good one from Todd. Who will play opposite Nick Bosa on first and second down to set the edge if Michael Williams is not ready at the beginning of the season? Cam Sample is a name to keep an eye out for because Cam comes over as a veteran from the Cincinnati Bengals, somebody who's played all over the defensive line. I think is solid against the run, can set a nice edge, but here, you could see how the 49ers have it set up. Of course, Keon White as well, but Keon dealing with the ankle question of his own. I think he's far along in his recovery. Somebody, though, that would take the roster spot if Bosa's not available at the very start. Cam Sample with Mikhail Kamara out of Indiana having some potential ability to fill in for the 49ers as well. He was a solid player for the Indiana Hoosiers, and prior to that for James Madison. So good question. We'll see how this all fills out. Plus, 49ers may not be done adding at defensive end yet. Nick Bosa has a brother. His name is Joey Bosa. I've been telling you for months, 49ers are interested in signing either him or another vet defensive end. The price just has to be right, and maybe it will be before too long. All right, everybody hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and check out the article with Jedd Fisch on the University of Washington. I'm going to pin it up in the comment section right now. We will talk to you very soon.